Right, we're going to put our push rod tubes together. We've got 3 new washers. The fat, smaller washer is the top one, and then you've got 2 washers that are the same thickness. The smaller one of the 2 is your middle washer, O-ring should I say, and the bigger one of the 2 is your bottom O-ring. Putting these together, basically, just get your top tube and your cap, have your squashed end at the top, cap, drop your cap on, drop your spring in, drop your flat washer in, and then basically get your middle washer, O-ring, just put a bit of oil on it, engine oil, and then just slide it down. And that, your flared end goes to the middle, just sits on there, and then again your big washer, O-ring, just lube that up, bit of oil, engine oil, sit it on the top, big O-ring for the bottom, same thing, bit of lube, sit that in place on the bottom. Then the actual push rod itself, this is the intake, which is silver. The exhaust push rod's black, and if I'm not mistaken it's just slightly longer as well. Bit of assembly lube on the ends. Now my push rods have been cleaned out. I've got a hole in the centre of your push rod for oil to go through. So clean your push rods, make sure that there's nothing inside your push rod tube. Right, just sit that down the middle. And what I'll do is I'll just stick that to one side for now, and we'll put the exhaust one together. This is for the rear cylinder as well. Right, I'll just knock it off a sec and we'll set up to put them in motor. Right, we'll put the inlet push rod in first. Now the inlet one goes in the rear hole that's inbound, closest to the... I mean, it's pretty obvious as well when you click it in place, it's actually pointing to the front. So if you put it in the exhaust one, it will be pointing that way, so obviously that's not your inlet. And then basically just get your push rod and lower it down the tube. Now I normally don't push them back in straight away. I make sure that the push rod's actually sat in the seat properly. And then grab your exhaust one. Same again, just put your tube through. And then just check that it is actually sat in the top of the lifter properly. And I think you can see the inlet is sitting higher than the exhaust at the minute, and if you remember when I put the lifters in, the lifter on the rear was sitting upwards in the air, because it was sat on top of the cam lobe, so that basically means that that valve would be open. Right, I'll just knock you off again for a minute. We'll get the others from the front and we'll get them put together. Right, put the front ones together. Yeah, it's important that you don't mix your push rod tubes up as well. Like, don't put an exhaust push rod tube in where the inlet should be, because they are a slightly different length. Which, actually, if I just pull that out. You can see, put it that way on. Not working very well. Right, I don't know if you can see that, but as you can see, the black one's longer than the silver one. So your exhaust push rod is longer than your inlet push rod, so I don't mix them up. Right, I'll just put this one in. Right, I'll put that one in. I know you can't see this, but it's in the others going in, so you know what the crack is. Right, I'll knock you off for now, and next thing we'll do is we'll put all the rocker arms and that back together. Right, rocker arms. They've all been cleaned. Plate, arms, rocker bars, whatever you want to call them. So, first thing first is we'll lube up where the shaft's going to go through. So we'll get some lube into the bushes in the rocker arms themselves. Plenty in there. Your rocker arms can only go in one way, and obviously you haven't mixed them up with like off the front, rear head onto the front and etc. A little bit in the cup where the push rod sits, and a little smear on the where it goes on the valve. Stick it to one side. Yeah, you've got your cup and where it hits your valve, and obviously you've got two holes here where your push rods come through. So obviously you can't put it on that way because it won't work. Obviously, so your cup is going over where your push rod is, so they can only go in one way. You can't put it in that way because obviously there's nout there, and you can't push your valve up and through there. So what I'll do next is I'll lube up the holes where the shaft goes through the support plate. Lube up the other rocker arm. And next we'll lube up the shaft. Right, the shaft has a cutout in it that lines up with this, sort of stops it rotating. So once you've got that lubed, just start your shaft into there. This one's a bit of a tight fit. if that's the one that I had to knock out. Right, just knock it off for a second and get my little nylon hammer. Right, I've tapped the shaft in to get it started, and we'll lower the rocker arm into place and just gently tap. Right, and if you look down the hole when you're getting close, you can see the groove in the pushrod shaft. In the rocker shaft. So when it gets to being lined up, just stop. I'll just give the end of that a wipe. Now that, if I remember rightly, that was the one that I had to tap out. So it's just a snug fit, and because it was covered in assembly lube, you can't grip it, so it wasn't as drastic as it seems. I wasn't hitting it really hard with that. And then basically just make sure that it's free, which it is. A bit of back play, a bit of end play, which we checked when we took them to bits. So that one's alright. So next step is we'll get the other shaft, and this one, if I remember rightly, just went in no problem, or came out no problem, should I say. Let's lube it up. And then start it in. Right, back again. Lost the battery then. Right, I've got the shaft in. Now just position your rocker arm in, and then just tap the shaft, like gently tap the shaft home. Make sure you keep it in line, it helps. I mean, the shaft's not all the way through there, as you can see, and if your rocker shaft's free, then you know something's going right. And then just watch for the groove as it gets lined up with the bolt hole. And then just clip the shit off the end if there is any. Nice and free. Now your two bolts should just go straight through, which they do. And that is your rockers back together. So I'll knock you off again for now. Right, we're going to put the rockers onto the top of the head. Now in here, new gasket. Frigging gasket, I'm going to do lally. O-ring. Put a bit of lube on it. And then before I put the rockers on, put a bit of extra lube on top of the valves. You want to make sure that when you're putting your rockers on, that that's whichever head you're doing, front or rear, that your valves, your rockers and everything, I'll start that again. You want to make sure that your push rods, lifters, are at the lowest point on the cam, so that when you put your rockers on and start tightening them down, you're not putting excessive pressure on your bolts and everything, trying to force them, because if they were up, as you were tightening it, you'd be trying to push your valve down. So just make sure they're at the lowest setting. And then just get your rocker assembly. Line it all up. Just make sure that your push rods sit into the cups on the end of the rocker arms. And then just start screwing your bolts down. Now you don't want to be tightening these down full. Before you tighten anything down so it's snug tight, make sure that your push rods are sat in the cups. once you've got them snugged up, just sort of a quarter of a turn, well not even that really, just so that you know that it is sort of nice and not tight but it's down, if you know what I mean. And then before you tighten them up fully, you need to put all your breather assembly in. Right, I shall grab the breather assembly. Right, on your breather assembly, you've got your bottom gasket, which obviously will just sit on there. You have your umbrella. Keep all this in view. New umbrella, just push the little tab through the hole and then just give it a tug from to the side. Doesn't take much to get it in place. And you get like a new sort of filter thing. Shove your filter into the hole. Then get your gasket. And then that sits in its top cover and another gasket. So just put your gasket in place, put that over the top. Now it's lining up at the minute, as you can see, but it will in a second. In fact, the easiest thing to do, rather than trying to get it all in bits like that, just keep it in place and then put a bolt through. Right, and before I sit it on, I need to put just a little dab of Loctite. So I'll just knock it off a minute and get my Loctite sorted out.